Welcome to the California-Nevada PGA chat here on October 11th. Thanks so much for joining us on your Friday morning. My name is Nikki Gatch. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern California PGA. And on behalf of our President, Eric Lohman, as well as our colleagues from the Northern California PGA section, President Eric Lippert and Executive Director Caitlin Doyle, we welcome you. We once again have some great guests lined up for you today. We have with us Ken Farrell of the PGA Career Consulting Team to educate us on the ExecuSearch service from the PGA of America. Ken, welcome. Look forward to hearing from you.
Thank
and
you.
Joining us as always to give us our legislative updates is Public Affairs Consultant for the Southern California Golf Association, as well as the California Alliance for Golf, Craig Kessler. Before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to our Southern California PGA President, Mr. Eric Lohman, for some opening comments.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Just great to be a part of this again this morning. Can't wait to hear what everybody has to say. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Eric Lohman, the Eric from Southern California, is present and here and eager to support. We will not rub it in too much with Mr. Lippert that the Northern California Eric is not quite at the same standard as the Southern California one this morning. But no, just thanks for doing this again. It's great. I can't wait to hear the update from Craig in regards to what's going on in the world of golf and politics and legislation. I know that we're up against it. The whole United States has got a funky month here ahead of it, or two with the election. On a more micro scale, it's great to hear what Craig has to share with us in regards to advocacy and how it affects us on a daily basis at our jobs, and obviously listening from everyone else and Ken about all the great things with employment in the PGA. It's a great time for golf. It's a great time to be a member of our association or to be a part of our section. So just eager to be a part of it. And thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you jumping on, and duly noted on the running tally between you and Mr. Lippert. I think you're leading the race there, but thanks for joining us. And with that, let's kick it off. And I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Caitlin Doyle.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Eric. I'll definitely pass that along to the other Eric L, spelled exactly the same. So nice to have you on, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We made it to another week, another Friday, and we have a great speaker today and someone that means a lot to myself, Ken Farrell, PGA. Many of you in Southern California know him, as well as many in Northern California. Ken served the Southern California section as career consultant for many, many years. He's also served the Aloha section PGA, as well as serving the Northern California PGA when I was transitioning to the new career consultant a couple of years back. Ken is now serving as our ExecuSearch recruiter. Recently, the career services and ExecuSearch department have kind of gone into different pillars. And so Ken is going to talk to you a little bit about what ExecuSearch is doing in the search space, along with our career consultants, and look forward to hearing, Ken, your presentation. So we'll let you go for it. Have fun.
Well, thank you, everyone, for allowing me to be on with you today and to talk a little bit about ExecuSearch. And I am a 36-year PGA member, proud to be a longtime member of the Southern California section, and now a couple of years up here in Northern California. I was a career consultant for Southern California for 13 years. Aloha section 15 years, reluctantly gave up both those, moved up north to really focus on ExecuSearch. And the question is, why is it so important that we're in this space? From day one, when I started as a career consultant, I did searches, and they primarily come from higher end clubs that are willing to pay a fee to help them find GMs, head professionals, directors of instruction, directors of golf, those kinds of things. But the reason it's so important for us to be in this space is, one, we want to get PGA professionals in front of the higher end jobs that are highly compensated, and they most certainly are. The compensation on a lot of positions nowadays have gone up extraordinarily. Some of our director of instruction positions we're doing now are $250,000 to $350,000. GM jobs that we're seeing out there at $400,000 or $500,000. Head professionals, it's not uncommon to see one now at $250,000. It's important to get PGA professionals in front of employers or be employers for these positions. And then also it's important to have PGA professionals as influencers in the industry. So really that was why it's so important for us to be in this space. So Steve, I'll just have you click as I ask you to, if you'll click to the next slide there. Steve, are you there? There you go. Okay. So this is some information on executive search and kind of how we go about it as we go through the process of working with employers. And it may be a club's board of directors. It may be the general manager in an HP search. It could be a director of golf hiring a director of instruction search, which we're doing at the Olympic Club right now. So it's employers in general, and they could be owners of clubs. They could be professionals at the facility themselves. Obviously, you know some of the information that's here, 30,000 members now. I remember when we were touting 18,000 members, so we've grown significantly and continue to do so. Our team is Scott Kimmick, and when I say our team, you know, there's always been career services with the career consultants, but what we finally did is branch off executive search because it just became so busy that we needed additional resources. So Scott Kimmick is our senior director of PGA executive search. And then specifically on this team is myself in the West, Kathy Grayson in the East. We've got Jim Remy, past president of the PGA, who's up in the New England area, a gentleman named Jack Druga. We have Dakota Creel, who is our admin person. She's just absolutely exceptional. Dakota's in Phoenix. And then we have Ben Finn, who helps us. He's in Frisco with comp. But with that, we have 25 career consultants across the country. And essentially, they lead most of the searches, and then our team supports them. But in many cases, we'll lead them as well with their support, depending upon the scenario. Before I forget, by the way, if we do a search in, let's say, Southern California or Northern California, 2.5% of that search fee is going to go to the section itself, back to you as a section member or associate for that matter in services that the sections provide back to you. So keep that in mind. And we rely on you to be really part of our team. If you hear of a search that becomes available, if you leave a position, if you hear that somebody at your club leaves a position, and you know the club president or you know the head of the committee that's in charge of that, please reach out to us. You can reach out to Nikki. You can reach out to Caitlin. You can reach out to myself. Let us know so that we can reach out to those that are responsible for this search. So next slide. So how many hours does it take? Typically 60 to 100 hours. This is one of the reasons that clubs say we need help with the search, because it is significant. The amount of time that goes behind the scenes in our case doing work for the employer is significant. And a lot of that is cultivating a database and cultivating the candidate pool. So the search candidate pool is significantly different when we get involved because our database extends far and wide through the PGA, through the CMAA, through others that we know. And that's one of the biggest things that we do. And that's the most important thing really, is bring the right candidate, the right qualified candidates to the search. So, but what are your options as an employer? You can do the search yourself. If you have an admin team in place, sometimes they want to do it themselves. Or you can hire a search firm. Again, the value of hiring a search firm is to do that 100 hours of administrative time, but the candidate pool is most definitely going to be different if you hire a search firm. Typical costs from the search firms, $12,000 to $60,000. A lot of times it depends upon total facility revenue. So let's say a facility was a $20 million facility compared to a $6 million facility. Those fees would be probably different, most likely for each facility. Next slide. As I mentioned, some of the positions that ExecuSearch is used for: general manager, an AGM, DOG, HP, superintendent, food and beverage manager, controller. I've done them for membership directors, some other positions, but those are primarily where the searches fall within. Next, please. So our advantage really is the 25 career consultants across the country and the sections all collectively working together as a team, to support the PGA professionals to get in front of the employers for these positions. And along with the administrative work, you'll see a couple of things on here. When we distribute notices, we distribute them through the the CMAA, the golf course superintendents, LPGA, PGA, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing too is that we do candidate behavioral assessments, and those are very, very valuable to help employers understand who might fit their club. The search always comes down to generally for the face-to-face interviews, 2 to 4 candidates. They're all exceptional. They all can do their job or do the job. It usually comes down to who's a cultural fit. The candidate behavioral assessments help them understand who might be a good fit. So, for example, if it's a head professional position that you're seeking to fill, if the general manager is a type A personality and they hire a type A head professional, they may kill each other in operations. So who would be the right fit? If the membership is a particular there's a particular culture within the membership, who is the right fit for that culture? So that's what those behavioral assessments help do as well. So those are definitely part of the search, as well as final backfilling. We do the background checks and just to ensure that no stone unturned and that this is a reliable, dependable, loyal, right candidate for sure. So next slide, please. Here's the process that we go through. We do a site visit, and then we get in there and really kind of do a market analysis and a compensation analysis. So if a club in, let's say, Northern California, a private club is seeking to hire a head golf professional, what should they be paying that head professional? What comp and benefits should they be using? So we have the PGA compensation data, CMAA compensation data, golf course superintendent compensation data, National Golf Course Owners Association compensation data. We put all that together. We'll also use the 990s so we can really understand what is going on in that marketplace, because we want a win-win situation for the club and for the candidate. And I will tell you that in most cases, we can usually increase that compensation by about 20%. Caitlin and I did one where we actually increased the compensation by I think it was $104,000 or $106,000 one time, and they'd never had a PGA professional in place. And we helped them get a PGA professional in place for that general manager position. That is a badge of honor that Caitlin carries. She did a phenomenal job on that one for sure. So qualifying the candidates, help them in offer and negotiation, support, evaluation, and support. We help develop the job description, the job notification, assist them with that. We then do a targeted search strategy, candidate presentations, interview facilitation. We'll facilitate the entire interview, lead the interviews if the employer wants us to. In most cases, we do, so that the board, the employers can sit back and really focus on the candidates and not have to worry about the administrative part. We suggest questions to the committees, put together agendas, all those kinds of things, which really take that part of the burden of the search process off the employer so they can really focus on the candidate pool. And then we'll assist with the onboarding and integration as well. So next one, Steve. Again, more service details as we go through the process. I've talked about most of these. Typically, so that you know, even if you're a candidate, you will most likely submit your resume through the portal. It comes to us. It's forwarded to the committee. The committee will review the interviews, or excuse me, the resumes for the interviews, and then ultimately determine who they want to maybe do first video interviews with. After first video interviews, they pare down, usually get to second video interviews. And then from that, generally 2 to 4 candidates go to face-to-face interviews. And that can be anywhere from a 2-hour interview to an all-day interview in some cases. And then there also is a 2-year placement guarantee. So for example, if a club hires us to do the search, and then hires a GM in that place, if that GM resigns or leaves within 2 years, we would go ahead and do that search again at no cost. Next slide, please. Typical hiring timeline. This is actually the Olympic Club's hiring timeline for the DOI search that I'm doing right now. It's changed a little bit. So this is usually fluid based upon the committee's timing, the general manager or the director of golf's timing as well. So this one has already changed, but usually it's about a 60-day process with an additional 2 weeks to 30 days added on to that for the notice period and the onboard period. So in general terms, 90 days from start to finish. I've done them in as short as 30 days in the desert. We had a lot of committee members that were in the summertime heading back to their homes in the east, and they said, we've got 30 days to get somebody done and in place before this. So certainly this can be 30 days, it can be 90 days, or it can be a lot longer. I worked with one high-end private club, and they actually took a year throughout the entire process. Something that they wanted to do to find the right candidate they felt that fit with them. The general manager was hiring a director of golf and actually visited all the clubs of the candidates that were in the final phases of the search, which was pretty interesting. So next slide, please. Compensation reports. I talked about all the areas where we gain compensation and benefits. This is a critical part of the search and really is an area where you can really help an employer, and you can also help the candidates as well. If any of you have not gone on to the to view 990s, if you're a private nonprofit organization, then you would fill out your taxes, and the 990 forms would be public knowledge, and you can actually see a lot of compensation information, a lot of information about clubs that they're required to post. So with that, it gives us a real good understanding of where the comp should be. Again, because that needs to be a win-win situation. Clubs typically want to see a long tenure, obviously, in their key executive staff. Interestingly enough, the average tenure now for a general manager is 3.2 years, which is a little bit shocking. The private clubs would love to see people, tenures of 5 to 10 years for sure, but that's not always the case. So you really want to get this portion right. Next slide, please. Past clients, you can see some of the past clients we've worked with. This list goes on and on and on. I tried to put some of them up here in Northern California, Southern California, just to give you an idea of some of the ones that we have worked with. It's really a privilege to be able to work with these clubs, all clubs for that matter. And it's not always country clubs. You'll see this kind of dominated by high-end private clubs, but it's not always private clubs. We've done resorts, we've done public facilities, we've worked with cities, we work with counties, we work with management companies, a little bit of everything. And it is a privilege to work with them. We learn a lot about their club and what they do as well. which is really beneficial for the future. Next slide, please. Some more notable employers. These are maybe some other ones we did. Burlingame, did several in Hawaii, which was really a lot of fun. Waialae Country Club. Mid-Pacific, we did a GM search there. Oahu Country Club. We worked with LCAB. That was a fun one that Edwin Nicky and I got to work on. Caitlin and I did several, which was a great experience for sure. So yeah, there's some others that we did. Next slide, please. So an employer will reach out to us. Typically, they will talk to a staff member that says, hey, you know, PGA Executive Search is available to you. I know we're looking for a GM or head professional, director of instruction, director of golf. You might reach out to them or they'll connect us to somebody. The other thing that happens a lot is a club president of one club will reach out to another club president and say, we just used their service. They really helped us find the right general manager. And so we'll make a presentation to that club, to that committee, to that general manager, to that club president, and give them some information that they can take to maybe to their board to really review. A lot of times they'll look at other competing search firms. You know, there's Copland Kubler, Dennehy, GBN. Oh, there's several of them out there. Typically, our fees are about half of theirs or sometimes a third of theirs. The reason is because those are search firms for profit. And so they need turnover and they need those higher end fees. PGAs under the PGA umbrella really is to serve the employer more so rather than the profit. So while a search firm's fee for a GM search may be $60,000 or $50,000, ours might come in at $20,000, $25,000. The other great thing about working with us, again, is we have 25 consultants across the country. So as resumes come in from all over the country, let's say somebody in Southern California was looking for a head golf professional and a resume came in from North Carolina, we could reach out to that North Carolina career consultant and say, what do you know about this person? And learn a little bit more about them. That's a huge part of the value of using PGA and executive search. So essentially what they would do is they would agree to service. We would submit a contract. The PGA home office would submit the contract. They would sign the contract, and then we submit an invoice for half the fee. So if the fee is $20,000, they're initially going to submit a check for $10,000. The service is initiated, and we really initiate all of the steps that happen next, and we keep the employer, the committee, the board of directors very busy because all they really need to do is sit back and follow the process. And we constantly remind them, let's stay focused on the process because the process of going through this is really phenomenal. It's really good in all search firms. I will say that. And ours is just exceptional. And so we initiate everything and they just need to follow the steps and stay with us. And we keep them on track, which is critical when you're dealing with a board of, let's say, 7 people, 9 people. Somebody needs to be in there and really keep them on track. A lot of times the committee chair doesn't want to be the bad guy or the bad girl. And so we keep people on track, and they really appreciate the fact that we do, because it can be tasking sometimes to be able to keep 7, 9 people on track and going in the same direction. They often get distracted, go sideways, and we keep them focused. And the focused on really truly is finding the right candidate for their facility. Additional costs that are included, and these are in the fee. Go back one second. Yeah, CMAA posting fees typically are $1,200 for non-members. That's on the national level. We'll then go out to the chapters. Golden State chapter covers Northern and Southern California. They're actually free to post. However, if you want an e-blast on the posting, we send that out, and that's typically a $350 fee. I think that's essential. If not, then you require a candidate to actually go to the fee and take a look and see what jobs are available. We want them to know what is going on, and they'll get that via e-blast. And then we work with a lot of the other groups and associations to get word out with a lot of networking that we do as well. So, okay, next slide. And I think this might be close to the final. Yeah, we can use your help again if you hear that a club or your club is looking for a new executive to fill an executive position. Let us know. A couple of things happen is the consultant in that area gets 7.5% of that fee for doing it, which is a good thing. The next thing is, and that would be your career consultant, by the way. The next thing is 2.5% of that final fee is going to go to the section to support you, the PGA members and associates. And this is where we hear most about who needs help. So that we can submit a proposal or presentation. Again, our real focus is to ensure that PGA professionals get in front of these positions. And that's why we're in this space. There you see who's helpful, a club contact, a name of somebody that we can reach out to communicate with. Again, you can reach out to me. And it's kfarrell@pgahq.com. If you reached out to Nikki, it would be ngach@pgahq.com. All of them are kind of the same. Caitlin C. Doyle@pgahq.com. Or if you want to see any of the career consultants, you can just go to pga.org and type in career consultants, and the entire list will come up with all their contact information as well. Next slide. All right, there you go. I think I covered a lot of what we do. Hopefully answered some questions. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you all might have right now. Or again, you can contact me, again, 951-324-3665. You can reach out to me, and more than happy to talk to you or any of the people at your club to kind of discuss more about what we do and support you as well. One final thing, this really gives us an opportunity to learn more about you as candidates as well. You may interview and get the job. You may interview and not get the job. You may not get an interview. And we can help you determine why that is the case. And I'll give you just one example. I had a gentleman who wasn't getting interviews. And I said, well, send me your resume and your cover letter and your documents. We completely retooled it. And that person ended up as the highest rated resume, at least when all the resumes were submitted, got an interview. Went into the interview and didn't do a great job preparing and investigating for the club. Wasn't asked to go to the next phase. So I was able to sit down twice with that person, work on their interview skills, different things like that. Ultimately, they end up in Northern California as a head golf professional and was successful. So that is one of the things that really help us be successful with you, our PGA professionals as well. So with that, Caitlin, Nikki, I will hand it back over to you. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer any.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Great presentation. Really appreciate all you're doing. Obviously, congratulations too on ExecuSearch and having it branch off and adding more to the team. I know we had a lot of great times with those searches, so really proud to see where this department's going and the future of ExecuSearch and the PGA of America. So thank you for providing all of that information. Just before we jump to our next speaker, just want to open the floor to maybe some question and answer. You can use the chat box, the Q&A box, if anyone has any questions for Ken here before we move on.
I've got one for Ken. Maybe that'll give folks a chance to type in a question. Ken, you kind of alluded to it there at the end of your presentation, but what piece of advice could you give everyone joining us today on the chat as they are preparing for an interview?
Yeah, I think the first thing Nikki, is we have, the PGA provides all this incredible support to PGA professionals and associates, career consultants. In fact, we just hired a new career consultant for Northern California, and obviously we're in the process for Southern California. First thing I would do is reach out to your career consultant because they're experienced in this area. And again, we sit in these interviews and we see what employers want, why people are successful, why people aren't successful. So I would definitely do that first. The next thing is to really be prepared. Employers want to be sure that you know about their club and that you've done their homework. And there's so much information now about the club, not only in the posting, but also their website, online. And we have this fraternal network of people. We're sitting at the section event, and we can talk about various clubs and what's going on. We know positions are open, and there's so much information to gather out there. Employers expect us to know that information and be really prepared. That's really, truly the biggest thing. I will tell you that I know 98% of the questions that are going to probably come up. Why wouldn't somebody reach out to me before their interview and talk with me? So I guess the point in that is utilize your resources. Caitlin's been there. She's been at the highest level of executive search. She knows what questions, she's led these before. Why wouldn't you reach out to a person like that and say, Caitlin, can you help me a little bit on what you think might come? There's so many various details underneath that, Nikki, that we could talk about, which I won't in the essence of time, but that would be the
Sure.
first.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you.
Kind of along those lines there, Ken and Nikki, obviously Ken, a big part of our in-person interviews is usually some type of a, presentation, whether that be a 30, 60, 90-day plan. As people are starting to prepare their documents, how important is that for a PGA member in both of our sections, whether or not they're looking for a job, to have something like that, where that's their portfolio of their 30, 60, 90-day plan, where it's always readily available, if a job pops up or an opportunity comes their way, to be prepared.
Well, that's a great question. I'm surprised at how many of us just rely on a resume and a cover letter. A resume is fact. It's all fact-based. This is what it is. The cover letter really is your opportunity to dispel some red flags. Red flag might be, I'm living in Southern California. I'm interested in Texas. And so you submit a resume to Texas. Let's say Texas is looking and saying, why do we need to go to Southern Cal to hire somebody when we've got great people in Texas? What do they know about Texas? What do they know about Southern Cal? Would they be happy here? Do they fit the culture? That's where your cover letter really comes in. The next thing is that we actually have a template for a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And I encourage all employers to ask the candidates to make a presentation. Could be 30, 60, 90. It could be 30, 90, 180, or it could be up to a year to make a presentation. The interesting part about that, Caitlin, and you understand this as much as anybody, when you put one of those together, you learn so much about yourself, and it requires so much investigation on our part to really put one together about the club. And by the way, in order to prepare that, we ask the employer to be very transparent with their information for final candidates, so that you get financial information, you get membership information, various things that you may not have access to even through their website. And we'll try and get you into the member area of the website so that you can put together that 30, 60, 90-day plan. But again, we have a general template that I'm more than happy to send anybody, and they should be reviewing that today, whether they're looking for a job or not. So I love that question. I love that part of it, especially for the fact that in most cases, people don't put one together until they may be submitting for a job. So
Absolutely. Thanks, Ken. Yeah, and it serves as a guide too. Once you get the role, you can kind of go back and look at that and say, okay, this is what I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do. Am I aligned on that process? So kind of helps you as you're starting a
Absolutely.
new job out. I don't think we have any more questions. So I
Okay.
think we'll wrap up with that. Obviously, Ken is a great resource for all of us. Ken's contact information was on the slides. If we could send out those slides after that to all the participants, that would be lovely as well. But thank you, Ken, for being here. Really appreciate your time and all you're doing in the PGA executive search space. So much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for letting me talk a little bit about executive search. But as a career consultant for 15 years, it doesn't mean that I still don't get to see you, but I will tell you, I miss all that face-to-face time with the members, and I also miss all that face-to-face time with people like Nikki Gatch and Caitlin Doyle and Craig Kessler, who is just one of the best. So really looking forward to time with Craig today too.
Thanks, Ken. We appreciate it. As always, great to see you, and thanks for all the great input and advice for everybody. I know we had one chat pop up, so we will follow up with you and maybe have Ken follow up with you separately, but we'll move forward in the presentation today. And with that, I'd like to introduce Craig Kessler, again, public affairs consultant for the SCGA and also the California Alliance for Golf. Craig, what's been going on the last month since we heard from you?
Well, you heard from me just 2 weeks ago, and at that moment, 2 weeks ago, we were a couple of days from the end of the 2024 legislative session, and nothing really changed in the last couple of days, but I'll just give a brief summary. There is something statewide on a regulatory front that did change on October 1st, and I'll go into that in some detail. But just to review the legislative session, again, it was another very successful one for golf in the state capitol. Every bill we opposed never made it to the governor's desk. One bill in particular that we opposed unless significantly amended was sufficiently amended to our satisfaction that the opposition was lifted. That's always a good thing. We didn't do quite as well in the bills that we supported. Some passed. And keep in mind, we only support those things that are laser focused on an impact on the golf community. We don't get involved in all other sorts of things. We're not big enough to become entangled at that level, nor do we want to have our message confused by those kinds of over-entanglements. One that we supported that didn't go forward, we didn't think it would go forward in a budget deficit year, and that had to do with creating some more permissions for localities, particularly water providers, to provide rebates for something other than just turf removal, but rebates like Los Angeles Water and Power and the Metropolitan Water District do already for turf conversions and other sort of creative conservation cards that golf can use just beyond removing turf. Once you remove, and at the end of the day, we can play golf on less turf, but we can't play golf on California-friendly, drought-tolerant cover, as you can have a front yard or a backyard or a median covered with. So ultimately, we're going to continue to push. We think we learned some lessons from that bill's failure to move forward, and we'll apply those lessons and plug on again. Those of you who don't follow the rhythms of politics probably aren't aware that even some of the most significant pieces of legislation in California history didn't make it on their first, their second, sometimes third or fourth attempt. It sometimes takes more attempts. We have patience on this and we'll move forward. As I suggested last time, we were disappointed. One bill that we strongly supported, we weren't the only ones, we were one of hundreds of sectors that supported it. A bill that was sponsored by the California Municipal Utilities Association that would have, for the first time in California history, and this probably comes as a surprise to many, would have set a specific target on water supply and would have created an aspiration to add 9 million acre feet to that supply no later than 2050. And when I say you may be surprised, because there are 81 separate mandates on decarbonizing California. Many of those mandates Golf is familiar with all of those mandates that require the replacement of currently gas-powered equipment with electric equipment. And yes, in many cases, when the day comes, the equipment will be twice as expensive and half as reliable. And the state has no trouble doing that, but it had a little bit of heartburn about putting the same kind of burden on itself and the Department of Water Resources. Also add that we fully expect that bill to run again and again until something like that passes. It would appear that the water retailers in this state are rather focused on getting that through. And I suspect that in reality, it wasn't so much the governor's opposition that caused him to veto the bill, but having to do with he's already upset the environmental community in this state by very aggressively pushing for the completion of the site's reservoir and doing some Environmental Quality Act shortcuts in order to get that done, which further upsets that community. In addition, his Delta conveyance plan has created some heartburn. So almost going with a third thing that created heartburn, I think we understand it. So I don't think the opposition was so much policy-wise or substantive, but it was a little bit more, I think, of a political nature. And like I said, I expect it to run next year, some version. I'm sure CMUA learned some lessons just as we did from a turf bill, and we'll continue to plug forward. Having said that, I hope this audience recognizes that over the course of recent years, whether the subject is independent contracting, neonicotinoids, glyphosate, the description of golf as functional turf for the purposes of prescriptions on the use of potable water to irrigate turf, and of course the various iterations of public golf endangerment acts, and in this last session, a bill that I'm sure Eric Lohman paid very close attention to because it affected his facility, that would have proscribed the use of all fertilizers and pesticides on golf courses, golf resorts in California's coastal zone. That passage would have been lethal. That was the bill that was totally amended to our satisfaction, that we were able to remove our opposition to it. It ultimately foundered in appropriations, but like I just explained, if it comes back again and again, it is highly likely, almost certain to come back with those things that we requested be amended out. So all of that is really positive moving forward. The one thing that did change on October 1, and this would be an issue that if this were an audience of golf course superintendents or agronomists, you'd really get excited about, you'd dive into, and you'd understand better. But I've always been a champion that we do as well as we do in California with advocacy, because we don't say independent contracting is a professional issue, and insecticides or pesticides are a superintendent issue, and water is and things are a club issue. If it affects golf, it's an issue for all of us. The expertise that perhaps I have to tap to deal with those specific issues comes from certain sectors. But in essence, as I've always stated, if you own a golf course, if you manage golf courses, if you are a professional, if you teach the game, if you're involved in the game, you are always better off in an industry that's successful and expanding. Just ask Ken Farrell. And you are worse off if it's going the other way. And so it really matters not. Research is an issue for all of us. I'll admit, though, even though, for example, the Southern California Golf Association, among others, gives a lot of money to research in this state out of UC Riverside, but we trust the USGA green section, the agronomists, the superintendents to spend it wisely, and then simply write us reports that we pretend to understand, but we really don't. And that's the way this works. So the following issue that changed on October 1 has been in the offing a long time. So long, in fact, that I dug up a story I wrote in 4 magazine exactly 7 years ago this month, October of 2017, in which I suggested that the era of recycled water for golf is going to be coming to an end. That story reflected certain things that were already going on that I thought militated in favor of that conclusion. But the real thing that ultimately would spell perhaps the end of non-potable reuse for golf courses and parks and cemeteries and other green spaces was finalized on October 1 when the state of California altered or amended Title 22 of the Water Code so that we now are able to treat wastewater fully to the point of making it drinking water. And so with projects already underway in Los Angeles County, San Diego County, and Santa Clara County, and soon to be projects in other places that are going to take the effluent sewage, wastewater, whatever you want to call it, and make it into drinking water, that is good. That is water that's increasingly going to not be, or effluent not be available to golf courses and parks and other green spaces to use as recycled water. And given the fact that recycled access is very expensive, to do the piping and the hookups is very expensive, it's very expensive from a public point of view, that is going to be crowded out again by this move towards really an extraordinarily sustainable feature. I mean, we always talk in golf that we have to keep playing and discovering and playing conservation cards. So as we get to 2030, 2040, 2050, 2060, we recognize that we have to significantly over time reduce our water footprint to remain viable. Well, the whole state needs to reduce its water footprint in other ways, human consumption being the leading player in that particular reduction play. And again, so if California expects to expand as an economy and go to 45 million, 50, 55 million persons, all of that is important. And what that portends for golf is that something that long ago we began 20, 25 years ago to rely upon, we hoped we would get to a day when almost 100% of the golf courses could boast that they didn't irrigate with drinking water. That's going to be problematic and difficult. And I just suggest putting that out there because it's not something to contemplate in the next 5. Well, it is if you have an existing agreement and the party that's going to negotiate for that to extend that agreement, I would highly recommend, and I've seen some private clubs do this in recent years, focus your negotiation on the length of term to get access. Don't worry about price, because ultimately that'll guarantee it. And if you still have opportunities, and those opportunities do exist to hook up to recycled water or non-potable sources, there are other sources in the form of raw water off the Mid-Valley Pipeline, jump all over it, because that's going to be the lifeline for your facility moving forward. In terms, otherwise, I would hope this would be an issue that when we go to big conferences or when we actually do have as everyone knows, I'm a big believer in preaching our message about the greatness of the game and about the environmental record, about the record in terms of all the community value benefits that it brings to the game. Communicate that to the 90% that doesn't play the game. But there's also a point when the 10% that does play the game, and particularly the leadership organizations, get together, whether it's at Golf Inc. conferences or the PGA show or the golf industry show. We need to have some really serious strategic discussions on the long-term implications of things like I just described, when on October 1, the world changed with respect to getting access to recycled water. We need to put those things out. And again, it's not the responsibility in this case of golf professionals. You have a day-to-day job. It's not even a responsibility of management groups or ownership groups and so forth on a day-to-day basis. You need to run those golf courses, do your marketing programs, do your budgeting, do all the things to keep these businesses thriving and alive. But when we get together at a national leadership level, we need to have these strategic conversations, in large because we just need to have them in order to chart some ways to the future better, and deal a little less with the mundane, which is easily handled at a local level, and a little more on the grand. So with that, that's where things stand as we end one legislative session. Well, for those of you who read the paper and realize that the legislature is in session, they're not in regular session. They're in a special session that was called by Governor Newsom because he wants some legislation that requires the refineries, the 10 that are in this state, to keep a certain amount of supply in reserve, because I'm not going to go through his arguments, and it's quite a fight going on. It would appear that despite the many millions of dollars that the oil and gas industry spends on lobbying and the fierce opposition that they're showing to this, being told exactly how much they have to keep in reserve, it looks right now from all the reporting, the governor's going to get his way and he will get this legislation in special session. But special session deals with single issues, and that's the single issue. So there won't be anything coming out involving golf until they reconvene after the first of the year. And when they do, I'll finish on a little bit of an organizational note, and it's also a personal note. Many, but probably not all of you, are aware that I stepped down as Director of Public Affairs at the SCGA on June 1st, and have been working in a consulting capacity, which Nikki has mentioned on these broadcasts, and to the California Alliance for Golf, where I've been the policy director de facto for some many years and sort of the organizer. But in recent months, there has been a move, and this morning the board of directors formally of the California Alliance for Golf, of which Nikki is a part, and Caitlin very well may be a part here very, very soon. She's certainly been privy to all this and has been on these calls, has decided that yours truly would be an effective part-time, it's an interesting part-time job, first executive director of the California Alliance for Golf. And that's not going to remove me. And I won't go into all the details of that. Those will come out a little bit later. But it's a combination of all of the key allied associations in the state, pooling their resources and pooling part of what they do best in order to make this possible. So with my stepping down, obviously SCGA has a robust public affairs department. The GCSA plays in this arena as well, and we will put together, like we've always done in the interest of collaboration, and the one thing that, and continue to not just do the one thing I think we do better in California than anywhere else, but maybe even do it better, and that is collaborate collectively so that when we speak with one voice, it's not a balkanized voice or a fractured voice. It's pretty much a unified voice, so that with any luck, and maybe with a little skill on my part, this can be a moment where somebody can look back, and it won't be me. I hope I can look back, but it will be from full retirement, not partial retirement. And we can look back at maybe this was a key moment, an inflection point in moving that statewide alliance from sort of an infancy, which has done remarkably well in the last 5 years, that maybe it can do even better in the next 5 and beyond. And my job will be to, as I've always stated, if I do this right, after a couple of years, you can hire someone half my age and pay them a lot more money, because they're going to need it, and really be a little bit more of a slave driver. But I'm an older gentleman, so they're going to go a little easy on me so they don't work me to death, I imagine. But I wanted to share that with everyone because it's literally about 2 hours old or something. It's been in the works for some weeks, but it's about 2 hours old. And so next time, and I guess you're going to give the date, it's in November, you can introduce me as the executive director of the California Alliance for Golf. But I asked, is this paid as much as like Mike Wan or whoever Seth Waugh's successor is? Well, it has not been named yet. I guess everyone's waiting for that moment. But I was told not quite. So with that, thanks again for having me on. I went a little longer than I said I would, Nikki, but it's still well under the 11 o'clock deadline. It looks like you have a burning question, and I know it's not about the National Football Conference East.
No, it is not. No, thank you, Craig. Yeah, I wasn't sure how to formally introduce you this morning, but congratulations. We're excited, to obviously be part of CAG and what the future holds for that group, and no one better to serve in that role than you. So thank you for agreeing to do that. And, we look forward to many more accomplishments and advocating for our game every day. So thank you for that, and congratulations, and cheers to everybody involved in that entire process. So thanks for the update today. As always, we are aiming for November 15th for our next chat. And we are hoping that we'll be able to secure the next PGA of America secretary to join us on that chat. We obviously don't know who that is, so bear with us, and we may have to adjust, but that will be our goal, is to bring on our next secretary of the association and have you all meet him. So we look forward to that, and thanks so much for joining us. Caitlin, do you have anything else?
No, have a great weekend, everyone. We'll be down in Monterey for our NCPGA Cup matches, so go team NCPGA, and yeah, take care all. We'll see you next month.
Yeah, best of luck to you guys. And as a reminder, as always, if you're joining us via phone, please reach out to either the Southern California or Northern California office to let us know that you were on, so we can make sure to get your PDR credit. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next month. Thank you.